So again, welcome to the ASQ Innovation TC session tonight. We are so blessed to have our phenomenal speaker, Mr. Jay Weiser, who is discussing with us Turbocharge your organization's innovation approach, leveraging the 5 leadership superpowers. We welcome you as we go through our event to please post any questions to chat. The speaker will be taking the questions at the end and engaging with you periodically. So without further ado, welcome Mr. Jay Weiser. He has partnered with leaders in middle management, Fortune 500 companies for over 25 years. You have a phenomenal speaker tonight because he has not only operated at every level of organizations, he has led them on the front lines, in the boardrooms. He has had the opportunity to work with phenomenal doctors from across the globes, including doctors Robert Kaplan and David Norton, the creators of the Balanced Scorecard. So not only does he have strategy, he is familiar with performance, management, excellence, and everything in between. Yes, 30 seconds, please. So Mr. Jay Weiser has a phenomenal client background, and he can envision the future, improve their clients' understanding, and help prepare them for the way forward. He is both a thought leader and a subject matter expert with conferences as a presenter and leading across the entire globe. So I welcome you to join Mr. Jay Weiser in his phenomenal presentation with us tonight. Jay, I'll now pass control over to you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you for having me this evening. Let me just share my screen here. There we go. Very good. So I want to start with a couple of questions. Why do leaders in their companies that are so successful suddenly fall from grace? Why are they caught off guard, unaware, and unprepared for what's happening around them? Why do they then struggle to recover and often still end up failing? Why do they fail to see, identify, and create their own innovative opportunities? And then sometimes they might see the opportunity, but then they fail to capitalize on it. These are questions that have bothered me, and I suspect you, for some time. In the face of a turbulent perma-crisis environment, addressing these questions is more, is more important than ever. So over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey to address these very challenges to help you see, think, and do differently. I'm Jay Weiser, Chief Catalyst and Navigator of Jay Weiser Consulting. Now, as Rhonda shared, I work with clients, large companies, small companies across industries, leaders across functions, to galvanize and mobilize leaders to break this pattern of being caught off guard and to help them become future ready. And then I partner with leadership and boards to help them actually navigate that change. Now, some of the pictures here are not new for you. You think about issues around cybersecurity, what's happening with AI, various economic issues. Even today, we're facing the risk of a government shutdown and the economic impacts that would occur as a result. Things are happening continually around us. You think about the trade war with China and the issues with chips. And if you think about the Ukraine conflict, it's not just happening in Ukraine. The impacts are happening across the world. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, that these risks are interconnected. And the forecast is for more of the same. This isn't going to end anytime soon. This is a new world that we're living in, and we have to become prepared and ready for it. So here's the first question. How are you in your organization playing? Are you playing to avoid losing, or are you playing to win? Two very different games. One is defense, one is offense. The only way you win games is by scoring points, which means you have to go on offense. And if you're playing defense, you're going to have a very different outcome when you're in a turbulent environment. In one case, you fall behind. And in the other case, you increase your probability of getting ahead. So when you think about your company today, we're going to pop up a poll in a moment, and I want you to vote on which game is your company playing. Is it A, playing to avoid losing, B, playing to win, or C, straddling both games? Rhonda, if you'd pop up the survey, please. Okay, it looks like we might have lost Rhonda. So if you can put your comments in the chat, that would be great. Put your vote in the chat, and we'll go from there.
You didn't lose me. I think we got all three questions in, and they should be.
Okay, wait 1 second.
There we go. I just opened the poll. Hopefully everybody will be able to see that. The questions with the three answers, if you could refer to that.
Great. So give people another minute, well, 30 seconds. We'll keep this moving. So if you would cast your vote, that would be great. So again, which game is your company playing?
Yes,
A, playing to avoid losing, playing to win, or straddling both games?
Closing the poll, we have 31 answers for straddling both games, 27.
Rhonda, I'm
yes.
looking at this. Let's give people 30 more seconds to respond, because it looks like only 9 people have responded.
Okay, sorry, I closed the poll, Jay. I don't think I can reopen it, honestly.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. So if we're talking about, let's see. So the thing is, today, if you're playing to avoid losing or straddling, that's something you want to change, because again, it's offense that scores points. And if you're playing to win, think about what you're going to do to keep playing that game. But otherwise, if you're an A or C, playing to avoid losing or straddling, you're kind of choking yourself. And excuse me, that's going to hold you back. So if you're playing to lose, very often your company looks like this. If you think about your org chart. So at the head, you have the chief idea killer. And for VPs, you've got the VP of no, the VP of protecting the status quo, and the VP of stay the course. If you notice, the position for manager of new growth ideas is vacant. Think about this. Do you feel like you work for a company like this or something similar? What impact does this stance have on the company? This certainly is not a path to success. So what do we need to do? What do we need to change? Well, playing to win drives the need to innovate. And one of the ways that we do that is by making changes in our organization. So along the left-hand column, you have a variety of topics that I'm calling domains. Then you have the from column. Where are we moving from? Where were we in the past? And the to column is where we want to be in the future. So if we think about priority for the business, we're coming from a time when businesses were focused on optimization, focused pretty highly, if not exclusively, on productivity, focused on results in the short term, exploiting what we have, and really not changing a whole lot, just sticking with the status quo. And what we need to do is move to opportunity being a priority, that we think about short-term results, but we're also thinking about what we need to do to thrive in the long term. We exploit what we have that's still relevant, but we have to explore to find what else we can be doing, how we can be better serving our customers, conduct business differently. Now, excuse me. And one of the things we do is challenge the past. That is so critical, not to accept what we did before, because what got us into this situation is not going to get us out. We need to think about the context. You know, I always say context matters. And I've heard other thought leaders say context is king. What is happening in our organizations, what's happening in our ecosystem, what's happening in the world at large. We have to take our blinders off. And it's not just about the present. We need to have a wide angle lens to see what's going on in the landscape around us. And we need to be thinking not just about the present, but about the future as well. If we think about how do we look at things, we're coming from a time where we were more firm-centric. We were looking inside. How can we do things better? How can we do things faster? How can we be more productive? How can we squeeze more juice out of the lemon? Customers were, in a lot of cases, not all cases, but customers were secondary to driving those numbers. We need to move to a world or mindset where we're much more customer-centric. It doesn't mean we're not thinking about the success of the firm, but that's after we think about providing value in success for the customer. When we think about who are we creating value for, in the past, it was solely the shareholder. And we were thinking about how do we increase our financial value. And now, in today's world, given all of the complexity, the role that companies are playing. And can't remember, the conference board came out and talked about, it's not just about shareholders, it's about stakeholders, customers, employees, our partners, others in our ecosystem, and of course, shareholders as well. And it's not just about financial results, it's about non-financial as well, in terms of for customers, customer satisfaction, customer value, customer engagement, for employees looking at engagement, reduced turnover, and the like. Now, you think about this from to as a continuum. So chances are there are some who are very much in the yellow and some who are kind of in between. And my guess is a few that are on the to side, which is fantastic. Now, so we're going to look at a couple more shifts because the organization itself has to change. So if we think about leadership, we're coming from a time where leadership was very hierarchical. In many of the companies I suspect many of you work in, it was command and control. It was an environment where if you failed or you made a mistake, that was frowned upon. And in some cases, punished, whether it was you were taken off projects, whether things were said behind your back, whether it was kind of noted almost on your permanent record. And we want to move to organizations that are flatter, more networked, where autonomy is given to various leaders and teams throughout the company. And instead of punishing failure, we learn from it. It's also about taking a different position on risk. You know, this playing to avoid losing is what a lot of companies did when disruptions hit, whether it be COVID, whether it be 9/11, whether it be the financial collapse. Those people played avoid risk, mitigate risk. They tended to look at risk in isolation, which isn't very good because these risks now that we're seeing, and even before, were so interconnected. So you have to think about more than incidents, because it's all the stuff in between. It's all the things that you probably have not thought about getting connected with. In the future, it's about understanding, being much more risk aware. It's also about taking risk, because risk is part of business. It's looking at the portfolio of risks you face and finding a way to balance those to your advantage, because taking risk can actually create leverage and lead you to higher returns. And it's also looking at learning is a major, major area of change. Historically, learning was role-based. What did you need to know to do your job? And when you were discussing things with your boss or supervisor, or your supervisor talking to his or her boss, very often debating or challenging what the boss was saying or your leader was saying, you could be putting yourself at risk. So now we need a learning mindset that is thinking focused as well as role focused, because roles change, the environment changes, and we need to think differently. We need to be curious. It's important for leaders today and employees as well that challenge and debate are fostered. And I'm going to talk more about that. And that we do it in a psychologically safe environment so employees feel comfortable raising issues. So we're going to have another poll here and to see where everybody stands. I'd appreciate if as many of you as possible would vote. I know that's very important to get credit for the session as well. So if you think about where your organization is today, where are you starting from? Are you A, yellow, firmly in the from column? Are you in between, possibly moving more towards the middle because you've started to make changes? Or are you in the green? So let's pop up the poll. And have everyone vote.
Starting poll now.
Thank you. So give you a minute to respond. Think about where you are in the organization. Rhonda, it looks like we've got some comments that people are not seeing the poll.
It's almost posted. Give me 30 seconds.
Rhonda, they're not seeing the poll.
30 seconds, please.
Rhonda.
Yes, I just needed 30 seconds, Jay. I'm sorry. I had to post it.
Okay, Rhonda, they were not seeing the poll.
The poll is now open and they should be able to vote.
Okay, so you just opened it now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take a minute and everyone get a chance to put their votes in.
Let's please let me know when you feel we've gathered enough responses.
Okay, I just want to go a little bit further. Let's give people another 30 seconds. It looks like we've got half of the folks who have finished. Uh, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll. So can you tell us what the results are, Rhonda?
Can you see them presenting? It says I'm applying and sharing the poll results out to the attendees. Shall we retry via chat? Because, yes, he sees it. No. Oh, no, they're saying it's not displaying to them. My apologies, Jay. How about if we go for chat?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so Rhonda, if you could monitor chat.
Thank you, yes. I'll say for each of those, yeah, okay, we're coming in here, we see, oh no. So you got some people saying, yes, they saw the poll results and some that was not. So we'll just go with, it says you have predominantly BJ, yellow and green in between.
Okay, so that means, or my take on that is that you're working on these things to move from the from to the to state, which is critical. if you happen to vote yellow, that's not a place where you want to be. And it's time to start to make that shift. And it's time to talk about it with your leadership team if you're on the yellow side. Now, if you're in the green, don't get complacent, because that's where you want to stay. And you want to make sure you're taking steps to do just that. So let's continue. So we've done a lot of talking about the environment and how the organization needs to transform. But we haven't really defined what innovation is. And I love this definition from the Business Development Bank of Canada. And I quote, "Simply put, innovation is about successfully implementing a new idea." So you have to successfully implement an idea. If you just have an idea and you don't implement it, it's just an idea. It's not an innovation. So it's successfully implementing a new idea that creates value for customers and other stakeholders. So if it's not creating value, it's probably not an innovation. Now, if you think about innovations that have happened in the last 30, 40 years, think about, I remember my first job. I was a cashier in a supermarket. And we used to have the old cashier where you had to push cash register where you'd have to push all the numbers. And while I was there, they introduced scanning, which was this whiz-bang new technology. Well, fast forward now, there are some stores we can use our phones to do our own scanning ourselves and pay on our phones. Think about telephones. I suspect Rhonda and I probably remember the dial phone, and then the touch tone phone, and then cordless phones in our homes, and our first cell phones. The first cell phone I had was like carrying around 2 bricks. And now our smartphones are so thin and light, and we have smart watches. So there are plethora of innovations around us. Even improving customer service by using a kiosk so people can order and have their food ready for them by the time they get to the front. Now, the thing that's interesting with all of this is when we talk about the shifts and where we need to go, is that existing capabilities are not sufficient, let alone adequate. Now, I love this quote from Alvin Toffler from the book Future Shock from over 50 years ago. "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Now, I think the big one here is the unlearn, because there's so much we did before that made us successful. But there's so much now because of technology, because of disruptions, because of the environment, we have to unlearn. Think for a moment about yourself. What have you had to unlearn in the past 5 to 10 years in order to do your job, in order to create space for learning? Think about what you have had to relearn or learn for the very first time. So each of those are very, very important. Now, if we're not doing that, there are consequences. Look at some of these names. These were companies that at one point, not too long ago, these companies were the biggest names in business. Sears, BlackBerry, Blockbuster, Kodak, Radio Shack, they're gone now because they failed to learn and they failed to adapt. In the case of Kodak, most of you probably know the story. They themselves invented the digital camera, but Kodak failed to capitalize on that innovation. Instead, they doubled down on film. And Fuji went digital, and so did everybody else. And Kodak was left behind. These are choices that we cannot afford to make. We can't afford not to learn, not to adapt, not to capitalize on innovation. The costs are high, especially in today's environment. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? The first thing, leaders have a choice to make. Now, we all know we cannot choose our circumstances, but we can choose how do we respond. Will we choose to be a captain, someone who can improvise, choose a new course, try something different, and engage the crew to move forward and to thrive? Or are we going to be captives, prisoners of what we knew, prisoners of our past success, prisoners in our existing product and service line while competitors go past us? Captives like to play the victim card. Captains thrive. Victims do not. So what are some things, how do we move to being that captain? What does a captain do differently than a captive? Well, first and foremost, they see, think, and do differently. So when we talk about seeing differently, a captain sees opportunities. A captain looks at things from different perspectives. Employee perspective, customer perspective, different stakeholders. And they also have the capability to zoom in and see detail when they need to, but to zoom out. So if you think about looking at a weather radar, you can see when that storm is going to pass. You're not so caught up in the moment of the storm, but how do you get through it? It's also about thinking differently, applying different frameworks, different models. And a key way we think differently is not to look at things as binary choices, that we have to choose this or that. Both and thinking is critical. If you think about Amazon Prime on their trucks, it says low prices, fast delivery, with the instruction to pick two. You don't have to choose, and competitors who make customers choose do not do very well. And think about my favorite candy, Reese's peanut butter cups. I don't have to choose between chocolate or peanut butter. I can have both together. Now, seeing and thinking differently is great, but unless you do differently, nothing is going to happen. And a key aspect of doing differently, in terms of being future fit and future ready, is thinking about preparedness. Now, you can't prepare for everything that could possibly happen, but we can be better prepared than we have been in the past. And when we think about preparedness, if you live along the coast, in the Gulf Coast, Florida, North Carolina, you probably have a lot of things, or you know what to do if you see a hurricane coming. And you have time to plan in advance. And the ones who do fare a lot better than the ones who wake up the morning of the storms hit and saying, oh my God, what do I do? and then they put themselves at risk. Now, as we've talked about a number of these changes, I went back and I looked at Peter Merrill's 8 innovation management principles. And I think I've touched on most of these, talking about the realization of value, the importance of leaders being future focused, having a strategic direction, recognizing that culture needs to change, exploiting insights and new learning. 6 is managing uncertainty. 7 is being adaptable. And 8 is taking a systems approach, recognizing, we talked about the risks being interrelated and interconnected. Now, in order to do these things, leaders need new capabilities. And that's why I created and codified the 5 leadership superpowers. These superpowers are based on what I've seen high-performing leaders do when they're faced with disruption and change. These are things that I've done in working with my clients to help them overcome the challenges they face. The superpowers are based on both and thinking. The first one is being a present futurist. You can't just be in the present because you're not going to be ready with the future. And the future in many cases is already here. It's just not widely distributed. So you have to focus on both and integrate that information to make decisions. We've talked about the need to learn. Now we also want to leverage our experience. But we have to challenge that as well. And learning is so important. So it's that experience and learning. It's also about being a prepared risk taker. Risk taking is part of business. Preparedness is important to be future ready. It's not one or the other. You must do both. And then there's strategic executor. So somebody who balances strategy and execution, who realizes that strategy and execution are inextricably linked. And a strategic executor doesn't make short-term decisions that impair their future performance because they're thinking about those implications. And the last superpower is being an accountable collaborator, somebody who recognizes that collaboration is essential when dealing with complex challenges, and is also the team that's collaborating is accountable for achieving outcomes that they all share that are important to the business. So taken together, the 5 leadership superpowers are what's necessary to thrive in the future. Now, in a recent article I wrote, Ignite, Empower Innovation with the 5 leadership superpowers, I broke the superpowers up into 2 groups. One is around igniting innovation, coming up with that idea and thinking about what are the things we can do, how they can improve things for our stakeholders. Being a present futurist is a key part of igniting innovation. And the same is true for experienced learner. Now, when it comes to powering innovation, being a prepared risk taker, taking that risk and being prepared for it launches you and powers you forward. Being a strategic executor is where you're implementing that idea that creates value and working as a team, collaborating together to not only come up with the best innovations, but to be able to deliver them and be accountable for results. Now let's dive into each one a bit more. So if we think about a present futurist, a great one is Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors. She was the epitome of a present futurist. She understood the auto market as it existed. And when she came on board, GM strengthened its core business. And at the same time, she focused on technological advances in what was happening around climate change, thinking about the environment, and conserving resources. She's been instrumental in steering GM towards an all-electric future. And she's made sure about putting that innovation in action. And you can see the vehicles that GM has that are electrified, from SUVs, pickup trucks, the Jeep, and so on. Now, I also do this with my clients, getting them to become present futurists, thinking about where they are, where they're starting from, but also thinking about what's their vision for the future. What trends and signals do they need to be considering, and using that to inform better, faster, more effective decisions. When it comes to being an experienced learner, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, is a great example. Now, his background was in electrical engineering and computer science. That was his base. That's where his experience came from. And he leveraged that around developing software, which Microsoft was so famous for. But he's also known for focusing on learning. And you think about the cloud and AI that they've invested in. Nadella fosters a curious and inquisitive culture. The leaders in Microsoft don't think they know it all, but the organization can learn it all. They foster debate to get the best ideas, and they make it a safe place for people to challenge. They make it safe for people to engage. They encourage a diversity of opinion to come up with what's best. And that's also something that I do. As I think about how I've approached my own learning, is I'm not tied to a particular methodology. I'm bringing in from multiple sources in an interdisciplinary approach that I'm learning and adjusting to take context into effect in the competitive environment. If we think about someone who's a prepared risk taker, I think Jeff Bezos is a great example. When he started Amazon, something like that had never, ever been done before. Amazon fosters an incredibly fast innovation environment. I was at a conference recently, and this gentleman from Amazon Web Services gave us an example that he actually lived. He had been working for another company. He came to work for Amazon Web Services, and he had asked to get a certain set of data. Now, in his other company, he would have had to have gone through 3 levels of approval to get the data. He got the data 2 hours after his request. No hoops to jump through. And in the course of analyzing the data, he identified an opportunity, and he put together a 1-pager. And that was like 1 o'clock in the morning. He started this at like 6 in the evening, 1 o'clock in the morning, 1-page memo. And he's thinking about, who are the people I need to get answers to my questions from? Who do I need input from? He identified 5 people. By 9:30, he had talked to 3 of them, and took that 1-page memo and now had a 2-page write-up. During the course of the day, he spoke to a few other people. And by 4:30, 24 hours later, he had approval for a pilot. Now, I suspect some of our companies take 24 weeks or even 24 months to be able to launch a pilot. Now, preparedness, as you think about each of the things Amazon has tried, they've done the research, they've gotten the data, they're building off of what they've known and how they approach business is part of their preparedness. Now, you think about in your own organizations, are you balancing both risk-taking and preparedness? When we think about being a strategic executor, Ann Wojcicki is the co-founder and CEO of 23andMe. She had this strategic vision where she saw the potential of direct-to-consumer genetic testing, even before it became mainstream. And not only did she come up with this innovation, it's under her leadership that they were able to execute because they navigated the regulatory challenges. And they provided, in terms of executing, is providing actionable insights on people's ancestry and most recently on their health. And she's formed partnerships to expand this with pharmaceutical companies and medical centers to leverage, who are interested in leveraging the genetic database that's been created. And as a result, 23andMe has democratized access to genetic information. And now, because that execution, that growth, that continued innovation mindset, they're now at the forefront of personalized medicine and research. And just a few weeks ago, they got approval for a cancer at home genetic test. So if you think about it, started off as ancestry, because innovations continued, partnerships were formed. They're now involved in personalized medicine, which is on the cutting edge. The last superpower is about being an accountable collaborator. This is about how we work together. Now, if we think about the Mayo Clinic, first of all, if you've ever been a patient, you'll know that they're multi and interdisciplinary. If you come in, for example, with a tumor, you're not just going to see the oncologist. You're going to see a radiologist. You're going to see a specialist for wherever that tumor is. And they work together as a team, and it's coordinated. Now, Mayo Clinic collaborates with health systems across the country to deliver better care and to learn from each other. Now, they've also partnered with Google around data. They've partnered with GE Healthcare around medical devices, X-ray machines, CAT scans, MRIs, all the different technology. Collaboration is at the core of Mayo Clinic. And you think about the cancer moonshot around reducing and eliminating the effects of cancer. Now, collectively, they're accountable for improving patient outcomes, and they're accountable for sharing information. But they know the only way to do that is by collaborating. And the one thing you do not hear about is micromanagement, because that is just not happening. Now, if we think about the superpowers collectively, reflect for a moment and think about each of the superpowers. What is your strongest superpower today? And what is your weakest? As an individual, I believe you should strive for proficiency in 1 to 3. It's very rare to find someone who is proficient in all 5, but you should be proficient in an area that supports your role and how you contribute to your leadership team. Now, at the same time, an organization, a leadership team, a project team, a functional leadership team should strive to have all 5 on the team, because that's going to eliminate blind spots. Now, excuse me. So having all 5, they support and inform one another, and there's a multiplier effect. What are the benefits? You're going to dampen downside risk. So you're not going to get disrupted as much. You're going to recover faster and be in a position to pounce on opportunities, amplifying your upside return. You're going to increase your probability of success in turbulent, uncertain whitewater environments. You're going to increase value creation for all stakeholders, because if you're doing this, you're going to be more responsive and proactive in your work with customers. They're going to get greater value. Their needs are going to be met, and it's going to be a better experience for customers. In this type of environment where people's opinions are valued and asked for, employees are more engaged, they're more productive, and you don't have the problems with turnover because people know they can grow with the company. And it's also great for the communities because they benefit because of the workers and how they buy and do things in the community, how the company takes care of the environment, because being a present futurist, they recognize that's important. And if you keep up with the superpowers, you're driving continuous improvement and you're enabling sustainability. Now, I was going to have a poll here, but given that the polling isn't working as well as it should, I'm just going to put a question out there. So if tomorrow morning you bump into your CEO and he says, or she says, what have you been up to? What did you do yesterday? What have you done so far this week? And you start to explain that you attended a webinar last night, and you tell them a little bit about what it was about. And the CEO says, what would you do? What do you recommend? Would it be one, that we need to start developing the 5 leadership superpowers in our organizations now? Would you say it's about developing the 5 leadership superpowers soon? Or, it was an interesting webinar, but we're fine the way we are. I think it's important. So assuming you're not saying it's fine the way we are, what do you do? How do you start? Well, I think learning and sharing the 5 leadership superpowers in your organization and how that helps. It's important as a leader to foster a future-oriented mindset. This is not just dealing with today, it's how are we going to thrive in the future? Promote a culture of curiosity and continuous learning. It's important to cultivate calculated risk-taking, have a pilot, experiment. You want to enhance your strategy execution capabilities, because if you can't adapt, if you can't implement that innovation, if you can't prepare for the future, your impact's going to be limited. And it's about developing a culture of collaboration and accountability. And leaders, this is your job. Now, high-performing organizations start by increasing awareness, building the case for action, and when it's compelling, committing to act. And they do that by having executive briefings on the superpowers, having a keynote and an all-employee meeting, or sharing podcasts. And these are all areas where I can help. Second is assessing where you are as an individual, as a leadership team, as an organization, and identifying and prioritizing the gaps based on your strategy and where you want to be, and developing a roadmap, a plan to make these changes. And third, and equally as important, is building and improving your superpowers, getting better at governance and improving leadership capabilities. And I support that through education and training programs. Now, you're not alone here. You know, this is a lot of work. You can't hire a consulting firm to do all of this for you. Leaders have to engage. Now, it's important not to wait, because a lot of times people go, oh, if we don't do anything, there's no risk. Well, waiting and deferring and ignoring has great risk, as we've seen with the companies that have failed before. So it's important to start now so you can strengthen your position and thrive in the future. Now, you don't have to do this alone. I've talked about some of the things that I do to assist and help companies accelerate on that journey and avoid some of the pitfalls. Now, I encourage you to email me at j@jwiser.com, and I'll be happy if I get an email from you to share the slides. And if you email me, you can get on the priority list for our new virtual training program that we'll be launching in November. It's going to be over 5 weeks, and we'll get into tactics around each of the 5 superpowers. I'll provide and share tools and templates that can help you actually become a present futurist, an experienced learner, and so on. I encourage you to connect and follow me on LinkedIn. And I've got my LinkedIn address, and we'll be sharing that in a mailing. And visit my website. Now, the best offer of all of this is to schedule a chat with me. I'm providing my Calendly link here, so you can go to the link and schedule a call with me. Be more than happy to answer your questions. I'll listen to what you think your challenges are, and we'll talk about them. And we can explore if and how I can help. So I invite you to take advantage of that, because you can benefit from having someone who's a catalyst and a navigator to help you on this journey. So with that, I want to thank you for your engagement and open things up for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing. Actually, I'm going to leave this up. And, Rhonda, if you can share with me some of the questions that have come in.
Thank you, Jay, so much, and welcome again to, or thank you so much for all of our attendees. Let's see, we are not getting a question in from our participants. So Jay, let's kick this off. So
actually, we just got one, and actually I saw one that was earlier, and someone had mentioned about having a crisis in leadership and engagement. And what are 3 things you can do? I think the first thing you can do is build awareness, make that case for change, have people understand the cost and risk of doing nothing. People tend to change when the risk of failure, the pain that comes with failure, is greater than what happens when you change. So that is critically important. The second thing is to identify the changes to start to reshape your culture. Make sure, if you are inviting input, that you don't shoot it down, that you listen to understand, because a diversity of people giving you input is going to lead to better results. So that's a great way to start. Now, let's see what questions have come in. Do you think that leadership is something you can teach? I absolutely believe it is. Now, some people, have attributes that they've developed through their work experience. I think people can learn. I think part of this is building awareness of the impact they're having and the impact they can have and what they need to be paying attention to, about being more emotionally intelligent, about being more curious, recognizing it's okay not to have the answers, but to have good questions, to engage with others. So I absolutely think that leadership is something you can teach. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody should or will become a leader. And it's not just about leaders in terms of position. People can exhibit leadership at any level in the organization. Let's see what else. Any advice for changing culture when colleagues are firm and fixed in past methods? That's one of my favorite questions, because when you talk to somebody, you start challenging what they're doing, their first instinct is to get defensive. So I like to take a different approach. I try and get them to talk about personal experience. I'll share an experience that I have. And, let's talk about, being open to ideas, to innovation, to being challenged. And I think about my two boys. They're 23 and 26 now. They would come to me and ask questions. Now, I'm guilty of one thing, because I was doing a lot of traveling as they were in school. So my older son, would come to me and ask for help. And, I would try and help him, but I tended to be on calls or I was working. And then one day he came home with a grade that didn't really fit him. And I said, "What happened? Why didn't you ask for help?" And he said, "Because you kept on saying no." So being open, being aware of the impact you're having. So I think if you can share a personal experience and ask the other people in the room, when has that affected you in a relationship, in a friendship, in school, that at least triggers the thinking and the awareness. And I think once you have that awareness, then you can say, how does this apply in a work environment? Let's see if there are any other questions. Well, I'm going to just pop up my screen again so you can see the contact information. And with that, Rhonda, I'll turn it back to you if you have any other questions or anything else that's come in.
Thank you so much. So thank you again, each and every one of you, for being our wonderful attendees tonight with our phenomenal speaker, Mr. Jay Weiser. It was a phenomenal session. I'm sure that not only did he engage you and excite you about your superpower, but really being able to take this into your organizations and practice it. I hope that you will email him, connect and follow up with him, visit his website and schedule a chat to learn and better understand how you can harness this phenomenal information to better not only yourself and your team, but your organizations writ large. Thank you again for being part of our ASQ Innovation TC presentation tonight. I'm just going to share my screen just very quickly to share with you our upcoming session. So again, thank you to our phenomenal speaker, Jay, tonight. We welcome you back on the 5th of October, the 11th of November, and the 7th of December for our upcoming sessions with Mr. Sunil Jain, talking about contrasting approaches to AI across the globe, and Miss Erin Urban, who will be doing a two-part special on elevating innovation, more impact, less stress. And then again, we welcome you back in 2024 too. So keep your seatbelts fastened for a great ride with ASQ Innovation going into 2024 with our phenomenal leaders, Miss Rebecca Mott, Mr. Larry Miller, Miss Jackie Jolly, and our chair-elect, Miss Michelle Vargas. Again, thank you for being here with us tonight, and we welcome you back. And again, thank our phenomenal speaker and invite you to follow up so you can learn more about what your superpower for success is. Good night, everyone.